Good afternoon. Before we get started with our next panel, do we have any elected officials in the room? And if we do, can you please stand up? And that would include our precinct chairs. Very good. Thank you. Thank y'all for being here today. This has been amazing. It's so good to be with y'all. My name is Christin Bentley, and I'm the State Republican Executive Committeewoman for Senate District 1. That means I serve on the board of the Republican Party of Texas, and I lead the legislative priority Stop Sexualizing Texas Kids. And I've had the honor of doing that for 2 sessions in a row now. I'm a Christian, I'm a former teacher, I'm a mom of 2 sons, a wife. And protecting children has always been primary and natural. So 4 years ago, when the late and great SREC Committeewoman, Jill Glover, and y'all may remember Jill. It's amazing to hear Chloe's story, and I thought about Jill as I sat there because that was Jill Glover's passion, was to end pediatric gender modification, which we were able to do in the 88th session before she passed. So when she called me 4 years ago and asked me to audit my oldest son's public school library for filthy books in Tyler, Texas, I agreed. Because that's what you do when Jill asks you to do something. But I doubted that I would find anything in his library, because after all, I live in one of the most Christian, most conservative regions in the state of Texas. And what I discovered 4 years ago shocked me. Over 400 titles with explicit content, some of the worst of the worst that we find in Texas public schools. And guess what? We found them in every single Texas public school that we audited after that. That moment opened my eyes to the blatant sexualization of children taking place in Texas and across our nation, but right here in Texas. Now, since then, and I have good news, we have good news. Since then, we have made tremendous progress, first in the 88th session and especially in the 89th session, including SB 13, which prohibits indecent and profane content in our public school libraries. Jill would be so proud of how our legislature works with the party and works with the grassroots. And I have to say that I am so proud to work with Texas Values because they are instrumental in getting these bills passed and standing with us. We just saw that with SB 8. And that is so important, and I'll just say this. It is harder than ever to be a kid. It's harder than ever. And after this session, we're making it easier, and we've got more good work ahead of us to do. So with that, it is my honor to introduce our next panel, Don't Make Me Come Down There, Laws. And yes, these are all women that are about business. So Senator Angela Paxton, SBOE member Julie Pickren, and Texas Values Director of Government Relations, Mary Elizabeth Castle, who will be our moderator today. Senator Angela Paxton. She represents Senate District 8 in the Texas Senate, serving Collin, Hunt, and Rains counties. She's a former educator and school counselor. She is a strong advocate for faith, family, and freedom, championing policies that protect children, strengthen families, and uphold Texas values. Senator Paxton is a proud mother and grandmother, and she brings her deep Christian faith into her service as a public leader. SBOE member Julie Pickren represents Texas State Board of Education District 7 and has been a consistent voice for parental rights, academic excellence, and common sense curriculum standards that protect children and reflect Texas values. As Director of Government Relations, Mary Elizabeth Castle works daily with the Texas Values team, legislators, and their staff at the Texas Capitol to ensure that pro-family values are protected. Please join me in giving our panelists a warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Christin. She gave a pretty great background of where we are today with protecting children in school libraries, and Christin's been very valuable in that work. So we wanted to continue that conversation because we did have some great legislation this session, Senate Bill 13, and for you to know what schools are doing and how the state board, how the State Board of Education also works with that issue. And I promise you, we did not coordinate our outfits today, but glad to always be on the... Exactly, the Holy Spirit. So glad to always be on the same page with everything. So Senator Paxton, we'll begin with you since you did champion Senate Bill 13 this session. And some people may understand, okay, didn't we solve this issue in the previous session? What does this bill do? Why do we need it? So where did the legislature basically leave off or bookmark the issue of protecting kids from explicit books after the 2023 session? And why was another law or clarification needed?
Well, thank you, Mary Elizabeth. There you go. I like your outfit. I don't know. She's got great taste. That's what I think. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you and with Julie. And actually, as we were working on these bills, there were a lot of bills that were in this direction to address the sexualization of children and our culture in general. But both of these ladies showed up in hearing after hearing after hearing to give expert testimony about the impact of sexualized material on our children. And of course, we have seen it in the digital space. We've seen it on the internet, in chat rooms. We have seen it in social media. But the last place that we would really expect to find something like this was in our school libraries. So this came on my radar before the 88th session, so the 2023 session. I started hearing about this, reading about concerns that parents had about sexually explicit material in their children's libraries around the state. And I remember thinking, surely not. That just must be an overreaction to something. You know, people have a lot of different perspectives on what's okay, what's not okay. So one day I had two mothers that both called me and they said, hey, have you heard about this issue? And I said, I have. And I said, have you seen any of this material? And both of these mothers said, oh yeah. So I said, well, can you come to my office, bring what you have? Both of these mothers, they came separately. I had separate meetings with each of them. But they both brought, a stack of books. Also, a little bit of a lesson in civil disobedience here. They had told their children to check out these books, and they said, I have no intention to return them to the school library. So they were expecting a kind of a hefty library fine at the end of the school year, but they were willing to do it. But I started looking through this material, and I was shocked. I was truly shocked. And we could spend some time talking about how this stuff over a long period of time ended up in the libraries. But the reality was, it is there. So the next thing I asked these mothers was, have you talked to your school board member? Have you talked to your principal. Yes, and that's why I called you, because they're not doing anything about it. That concerned me in a certain way even more than this issue of the material in the libraries, because you've got a whole other level of problem when you're not being responsive to the parents of the children in your district. So this is why I started calling Senate Bill 13 the "Don't Make Me Come Down There" bill. I'm a former teacher, I'm a former school counselor, I'm a mom, I'm a grandmother, and this stuff has no business in our libraries. So in 2023, the Senate had a bill, Senate Bill 13, very similar to this bill, and then the House also had a bill, the Reader Act, House Bill 900. Many of you were involved in getting that bill passed as well. They both moved through the system. We passed both bills in the Senate. We passed the House bill, and we passed my Senate bill. Unfortunately, like a lot of other things that session, this bill did not get a hearing in the House. So they did different things, and unfortunately, there were a number of provisions in House Bill 900 that were stripped out by the courts. And so that is why in the last session, we came back with Senate Bill 13, and we looked at what had not been able to survive the courts. We thought about ways that we could address those things in ways that we could survive the courts. And we also just built off of the foundation that we'd already built.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for explaining Senate Bill 13 and why that was needed. It gets very complicated when you talk about what was struck down by the courts and what is upheld, but that's just the complicated way of the legislature. You know, some people aren't aware that there are different remedies and different elected officials that can help with their issues. So Ms. Pickren, you're a member of the State Board of Education, which is an elected office that represents a large number of constituents. Can you tell us about the State Board of Education, what they do, how many times a year did they meet, and actually how they address this issue as well on explicit books?
Remember, we're all sharing right now. Thank you. We're doing the little hokey pokey, put your left foot in, whatever. Okay, getting these microphones situated. Yes, thank you. Also, now, as of a couple of weeks ago, it's now Dr. Pickren. I had, congratulations. Thank you. Of all things, thankful to God. It was my 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. project for those of y'all in here that know me. Doctorate in public service. I'm very thankful to God for giving me the ability to do that. So anyways, yes, Texas State Board of Education, a lot of people don't even know that we exist, to be honest. I remember when I told my family that I was going to run for Texas State Board of Education. I have a very large family. About 90% of them go, "Julie, what's that?" So if you don't know that we exist, we're not offended. A lot of Texans don't know, but we have very large districts. In my district covers about 10,000 square miles of the great state of Texas. It's actually bigger than 9 states. And so in my district, I have 11 House reps and 5 Texas senators in my district. So we cover a large area. My district goes from Fort Bend County all the way east to the Louisiana border, and then straight north to just south of Lufkin, Texas. So it's a lot of counties, a lot of people. I have the honor of representing about 2.5 million Texans and serving 6 million children of Texas every day of my life. So what we do is we set the standards for, there's a lot that we do. We set the standards for all the education standards, graduation standards, graduation credits. We also are over school safety and security. The Texas State Safety and Security Commission actually reports to my committee. We're also over teacher training and teacher certification. Again, that reports to my committee. So your teachers, right? When y'all seen all these teachers go to the letting the quiet part out loud, I'm gonna say, what they've been indoctrinating our children with in the classroom, we saw come out in full exposure after my dear friend Charlie Kirk was murdered, right? Then that really was a separation between the sheep and the goat. Then people started saying, oh my goodness, this teacher that is advocating for everyone who follows Charlie Kirk to be murdered, right? What would they say? What was the term? Catch it in the neck? okay? And we had certified teachers in the state of Texas saying that publicly. Okay, that state certifications come before my committee, which, by the way, the Texas Education Agency, I think 2 days after Charlie was martyred, they set up a portal where people could turn in all of these public statements of violence, because violence is never calling for someone's murder or for people's genocide, right? Genocide of conservatives, genocide of Christians is what they were calling for. That's never protected by the First Amendment. So Texas Education Agency, at my request and other people's request, set up a portal where the public could go and report all of these social media posts. So anyways, yes, we need accountability. We need accountability in education. Education is the Wild West. People are doing whatever they want to do without regard or respect to the law. Great people like Senator Paxton and in our House and in our Senate, Senator Mays Middleton, great members of our House are passing wonderful laws in education, things like putting prayer back in schools, chaplains in schools, the Bible in education, pornography, no obscenities, prioritizing patriotism, 1836 Project. I mean, they have been working so hard to give us great laws, but the problem is that we have had almost 0 to none enforcement of these laws. So that's when people say, I don't understand. I went and testified on Senator Paxton's bill. Pornography is illegal in public education now, but yet my kids are still given a book by the teacher in the classroom that there's children here, I'm not gonna say it, okay? But every single page is something with an obscenity or a pornographic act on it, an illustrated book, okay? So they're saying, I don't understand. I went and testified, I did what I'm supposed to do, I gave to Texas Values, I signed the petition, I did everything, it's illegal, but yet it's still happening. And so that's where we have to get busy. That's where everyone on the stage and everyone here, we need enforcement, we need accountability. So I think I went off from your question there. I'm so sorry. But yes, Texas State Board of Education, please come testify before us. I love to hear from parents. Children do not belong to the government, children belong to you. And that's not my opinion, that's what the Word of God says. Psalm 127 says that children are a blessing from the Lord, and the Lord was talking to families. If you really truly believe that children belong to the government, there are wonderful communist countries, not wonderful, wicked communist countries all over this earth that believe just like you. Go join your communist country. That's not in America, and that's not in Texas.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Pickren. Now back to the library books. So the legislature saw that this was a concern since 2023, and there were some things that were unresolved, and this became a topic in what we called an interim charge in the Senate. So some of our listeners, some of our supporters aren't familiar with what an interim charge is. We also had interim hearings, that we were a part of as well. So can you explain that process and why Chairman Christin of the Senate Education Committee thought that that should be an interim charge and the process of interim hearings?
Yes, so many of you may or may not know that the Texas legislature meets in odd years in a regular session for 140 days. So typically that begins at the beginning of January, goes through Memorial Day. And then unless the governor calls a special session, as he has called 2 special sessions, and after 23, I think there were 4 special sessions. My opinion is they don't feel so special when you have so many, but anyway. They last for 30 days each. That's the maximum amount of time. And so other than a special session that the governor might call, the legislature is then not in session where we can pass laws until the following odd year. So there's about 18 months between the end of one regular session, the beginning of the next regular session. That period of time is called the interim. So as you all know, in DC, they're kind of perpetually in session. So that's an ongoing thing all year long. They have recesses between, certain periods of time. But this is how we do it in Texas. So during the interim, we are still, as members of the legislature, we're, of course, in our districts, we're meeting with people. We're in the business of getting ready for the next regular session because we only have 140 days to pass laws. That's it. So we can't wait until we get there to start thinking about what we want to pass. So in the House and the Senate both, committees meet to consider what are called interim charges. So these are things, policy issues that we study during the interim so that we can consider what sort of legislation we need to have queued up, ready to file, ready to go when we hit the next regular session. I appreciate in the Senate that the Lieutenant Governor seeks our input as members of the things that we think need to be studied or looked at. A lot of what we look at are also just the implementation of things that have already been passed, but we're also thinking about what new things do we need to consider. So that's what happens during the interim. Those are what interim charges are. And then as we are studying those things, we do have interim hearings. And those hearings are to get public input, to get expert input into the topic at hand that committee is listening to. We don't vote on anything during those periods of time because we can only vote when we're in session. So it's simply to gather information, to study, to learn, and figure out what do we need to have in place so that we are ready to hit the ground running when the regular session begins.
Thank you so much. And Senate Bill 13 was actually a part of that interim charge as well. And what were some of the things that we saw in that hearing that we said, okay, we're going to clarify and make our law stronger for the library book issue?
Well, I mentioned that House Bill 900, the Reader Act, did pass both houses and was signed into law, but there were a number of provisions that were struck down. The one thing that sort of survived the court scrutiny were some of the actual standards that school libraries and school districts did have to have certain standards. And so that part of the bill did survive and moved forward. But of course, there was still no organized process that was required of school boards or school districts with regard to how does material get into their library? How does a parent have the ability to challenge that? Who decides these things? And so we listened to a lot of testimony, and of course, many of these ideas were already in Senate Bill 13 that we had passed in the Senate from the previous session. So we kept most of those ideas. We incorporated what had already been passed by in the House bill and had survived the courts. But we built a new bill, a bigger and better Senate Bill 13 that incorporated the things that we heard from the public. And we listened to school districts about how to implement these things. So, you know, you all know this. It's not every teacher. It's not every principal. It's not every school board member that is against us and against our children on these things. There are many that are in the right direction and they want to be responsive to families. But in the mix are people that have nefarious intentions. And at a minimum, that don't see their job as listening to the parents. They see their job as rubber stamping whatever the superintendent says. So it was important for us to build something that would put parents back in the driver's seat and would actually cause school boards to have to be accountable to the people in their districts. I don't know if you wanted me to kind of talk about the main features that came out of that we passed, or if you want to hold on that.
Yeah, we might hold on that for now, but I did want to go to Dr. Pickren. So Dr. Pickren, this sounds kind of bleak. You know, we did a lot of heavy lifting to protect kids from sexually explicit books, but there is hope. Not every book out there, you know, will be inappropriate for kids. So we do have the Bluebonnet materials that were voted on by the SBOE in December. Can you talk about that vote and how that's a positive thing that we have?
Love to talk about the Bluebonnet.
Yeah.
And just so that y'all can understand a little bit of the relationship between the legislature, the governor, and the Texas State Board of Education is these wonderful laws like SB 13 that Senator Paxton has been so faithful to champion just session after session, always fighting for parents and for righteousness for our children in our schools. I mean, really, thank you. You've done a phenomenal job. What happens is those laws then come over to the Texas State Board of Education, and people technically, constitutionally, we're a division, we're part of the executive branch, but a lot of times we function as a legislative board because we write a lot of education code and we write a lot of administrative code. So then what happens on this great law like SB 13, then it comes over to the State Board of Education for us to actually write the implementation laws of how it's carried out. But then we're in partnership with an unelected agency. How many, sometimes things go wrong with bureaucrats, right? We lose wonderful intent from our great legislators. So that's always been our challenge, and that's what I hope that y'all will come to testify before on the State Board of Education, to keep the intent strong, to keep the intent of no pornography, no obscenities in our classrooms, in our school libraries, and in our school book fairs. And what's available online, which, if y'all don't know, there's a federal law that prevents anyone from asking your children, your grandchildren, what sexual orientation or gender identity they want to be. It's called the Pupil Information Protection Act, PIPRA. So when this has been happening, never mind the fact that we've been passing great state laws, there's been clear violations of federal law. But I want to talk about something great now that Mary Elizabeth asked me about, is the Blue Bonnet materials. So I told y'all about all of these wonderful laws that have been being passed, that the Informed American Patriotism Act by Dr. Greg Bond in the Texas House, that says that all kindergarten through 12th grade instructional materials, all tier 1, English, math, science, social studies, must be taught through a patriotic lens. Okay, so that eliminates a lot of Marxist ideology. That eliminates a lot of DEI, CRT, all of that, things that divide our children, that pushes identity politics down into our children and causes division in our state and in our country. So patriotism in education must use the Old Testament and the New Testament as instructional text when teaching English and teaching social studies. That's the state law. And actually, they do wonderful things sometimes. They'll pass legislation before technically it's legal, okay? And then we just sit there and we hope that the Supreme Court will change their mind. And that's what happened on that law. The end of third quarter 2022, the Supreme Court gave us a wonderful ruling out of Maine that said that public tax dollars could be used towards religious instruction and biblical instruction. So immediately that made our law legal, that said that you could use the Old Testament and the New Testament when teaching English and social studies. So then went back to the legislature and the governor and requested a whole lot of money to officially make Texas a national publisher. And so everyone was fully on board, governor, lieutenant governor, House, Senate, everyone was fully on board. And because y'all can imagine getting these woke publishers out of New York, Chicago, LA, San Francisco to abide by Texas laws, dear Lord, I mean, I can tell you right now, I met with all their CEOs. It was not going to happen. So Texas became our own publisher, and the new Blue Bonnet materials, only available in written form, because I could talk with you for 20 minutes about why children need to actually feel the friction between the pencil and the paper to have long-term retention of knowledge and get off of all these devices. The devices are very good for short-term. They're terrible for long-term comprehension. So the Blue Bonnet materials are only available in workbook form. If you wanted to put a child in front of a computer with the Texas Blue Bonnet materials, there's no platform to support it. It's only available in workbook form. Teaches cursive, uses the Old Testament and the New Testament. Yeah, cursive is a big deal. You want to talk about, if we stop teaching cursive to our children, you're one generation away from a literate, right? Not illiterate, a literate population that will not be able to read founding documents for themselves. They'll be dependent on AI to interpret the Declaration of Independence, Magna Carta, Constitution. They'll be dependent on artificial intelligence or somebody somewhere to interpret it for them. So it's imperative that our population knows cursive just so that they can understand their God-given unalienable rights. So founding documents are in the Blue Bonnet materials. It is something to be very proud of. And because the governor has created one of the finest economies in the history of the United States, Texas had enough money to pay for it to make it free. So anybody can use it. It's totally free. We have governors that are contacting Texas because they want to use our Blue Bonnet materials in their states. And so Texas, like we always do, we see the problem, we don't complain, we just get together with our teams, we put our heads together, we come up with a solution, and we go to work. That's what Texas does.
All right, we're slightly over time, I believe. Are we ready for the next panel? Okay, maybe not. So I have one final question. This is about the parental rights side of things. So you did pass a law this session, Senate Bill 204, that has a parental rights handbook. and also says that school board members have to be educated on parental rights as well. And Dr. Pickren, I believe you are helping with the charge at the SBOE to help draft some of those materials. So very briefly, if the two of you can talk about that bill and how it be implemented and how this will be great for parents.
Well, I think one of the big issues that came out of the issue with sexually explicit material in our school libraries, as I said earlier, was the fact that not only was this material there, but these parents were coming to me because they were not able to get any sort of recourse through the people they should have been able to get recourse, right? Their school board members and their principals. So one of the things that we realized was we need to make sure that every school board member understands what the parents' rights are. And you know, it's a lot of you can clap for that. You got parents' rights. You know, as you've already mentioned, I mean, your rights don't come from the Texas Constitution or the U.S. Constitution. They come from the Lord. That's why we call them unalienable rights. But not everyone just knows what those are. If you haven't been taught, you don't know what those rights are. And many of our school board members, we just realized, you know what, let's just make it really clear so no one has any reason not to know, but school board members must be trained and educated on what the parents' rights are. So that was a big part of 204. Another bill that is similar in the way that I think it will make a difference is it became clear to us that, I mean, we require school boards to pass policies all the time. It turns out there was a little loophole, and that was the law did not require them to follow the policies that they passed. Meaning a school board was in compliance with the law if it adopted the policy, but there was nothing forcing them to actually implement the policy. So we also passed a law called policy adherence. And now when we require a school board to adopt a policy, it also means you have to do it. So it's kind of like when God gives us the 10 Commandments, He's not just saying, I want you to read these. He's like, I want you to do these too. It all goes together. So I think that will go a long way in helping educate school board members and make them aware of the rights that parents have, and it puts on them the obligation to fulfill those rights.
Thank you. Yes, so again, great legislation. We're going to come back and write it, which is the implementation side of it, which will become part of Texas Administrative Code. And so I have the honor of being the chairwoman of that committee that's going to develop and write the parents' rights training module for all school board trustees in the state. And y'all, let me explain to y'all where this comes from, okay? Because people always say, why are you wasting time on a bill about parents' rights? Because some people will say that. Okay, I'm sure you've heard it too, right? There's all this going on. Why are you doing that? Okay, so in the Biden administration or regime, however you want to refer to it, we saw out of Texas, we had a school board trustee member, Viola Garcia, from a school district right outside of Houston that worked with people like Texas Association of School Boards and National School Boards Association, who went to the White House to request that the Patriot Act be used against parents who show up to school board meetings to use their 1 or 2 minutes, whatever they're given, to say, hey, I don't think my child should learn that they were born an oppressor or a victim because of the color of their skin. Or I don't want my child being forced to wear a mask because they're an asthmatic and the doctor says it's probably not the best for them. So parents just going for 1 or 2 minutes to their local school board, and all of a sudden they have the FBI showing up at their place of employment investigating them as a domestic terrorist, or busting down their door and putting guns to their head in front of their children and taking every electronics in their room, which has happened in the great state of Texas, okay? So when people tell you, oh, we didn't need a parental bill of rights, it's already in there. Yes, we did, because of the wickedness that was coming down from the Biden regime onto Texas. And what happened was, many of our school districts across the state, they have their own police department. And the way that our law is currently set up, that police department, that police chief is not accountable to any elected official at all anywhere in the state. That police chief which some of them even have SWAT teams. Some of our larger school districts, their police departments are the largest police departments in their counties, okay? And that police chief is only accountable to the superintendent. I know, I was a school board trustee. We had a very large police department, and I was not allowed to ask my police chief questions unless my superintendent approved of it, and that is the way our law is written. So that's why we needed the Parent Bill of Rights. That's why we need our trustees to understand what are God-given, unalienable parent rights. And yes, we have to protect our parents. And so that's kind of the backstory of why we got here and what's happened. And I just want to say thank you. And I'm so honored to be the chairwoman of this committee, because our trustees need to understand, before I pass that law, how is that going to affect my parents? How's that going to affect, or that local policy, which is local law? How is that going to affect a single mom who lives in my district, who probably can't show up to my board meetings to talk because she's doing everything she can to keep a roof over her children's heads? So thank you. And I want to say also the Bill of Rights, Chapter 26, the Parent Bill of Rights in our Texas Education Code, is going to be on the ballot to amend our Texas Constitution, to put it on our Texas Constitution in November. And the verbiage, y'all did a beautiful job with this, by the way. The verbiage that's used in that constitutional amendment is the strongest legal verbiage allowed by the United States Supreme Court to protect parents' rights. Yes. It says you better have a darn good reason to violate this parental's rights. It tells the government you better have a very good reason, otherwise it's going to be a civil rights violation, which is punishable up to a $250,000 fine per instance per child, okay? So anyways, so when that's on your ballot in November, please vote for the Parental Rights Amendment to the Texas Constitution, because what that will do is that will say it doesn't matter which way politics goes, which way our Senate, House, Governor, Lieutenant, which way it goes, it will be part of the Texas Constitution. So we need to show up for that in November. Thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, ladies. I think we're a little over time, but thank you so much for your valuable information. And if you want to speak with them afterwards, they have so much that they can share about Senate Bill 13 and the Parental Bill of Rights. But very grateful to the two of you for your work at the legislature and the State Board of Education. Let's just give them a round of applause right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless y'all.